Hey, what's up YouTube? Zirene here. I know it's been 5 years, it's been half a decade, but there's no better time to return to making guides than the present. And today we're going to be starting with Yuumi, the cat stat backpack. Yuumi is the newest enchanter in League of Legends and has just hit the PBE. This is going to be a no-nonsense guide to Yuumi, and what I mean by that is that this is not a 1000 AP, you'll never guess what I just did video. This is no bullshit. Her abilities, what they do, interactions that she has that I think are unique, the ideal way to play that early lane phase, how to ward in the mid game, and how to play late game team fights. I also am going to cover her rune choices and why, her item choices I think you should be making, and her summoner spells. So, without further ado, let's get into the cat stat backpack. Yuumi is an enchanter that will only be played in the support role. I highly doubt that she will be played anywhere else, because, as you see at level 1, she starts with 2 abilities. You and Me is automatic, and you will start with this at the beginning of the game. But it doesn't tax how many points she has overall. So, you get to put a point in your queue at the beginning of the game, and I highly recommend that. This ability, Prowling Projectile, will go up to 6 points total. It's her poke, and it will help you in the lane phase. But now let's start with Bop and Block. Bop and Block is your passive. Your passive is a basic attack that gives you a shield that has an AP ratio on it, and it restores mana. Both of those increase with level. It also has an internal cooldown that decreases with level. The interesting parts of Bop and Block are that this basic attack is very snappy. It's reminiscent of having a Vel'Koz basic attack or a Nico fully stacked W. There's no travel time on it like her normal basic attacks, as you can see. Also, the shield is permanent, and it stays on you until it's broken. This shield can actually be delivered to people with your W. You can see I lose the shield, and the dummy gains it. It's that big orb. And the shield returns to me when I detach. So, what Yuumi will be doing during the lane phase is you won't be just attached to somebody. You can't basic attack while you do it. So, you'll be detached. You'll be basic attacking minions to help shove the bottom wave if you need priority. Basic attack to maybe get some Spell Thief stacks if you're taking that. And you'll be using Bop and Block to trade. Yuumi has 500 range, so most marksmen are the same range, if not longer range than her. So Bop and Block is a necessity to basic attack, and then deliver the shield, and then you can detach and do what you like after. Also, your mana costs are 60 and 60, and you'll be spamming these abilities for the early parts of the game, so you'll need that mana restore. This encourages you to not be attached to somebody the entire time, and to spend some time in the game detached, which will mostly be during the lane phase. You'll be going back and forth, trying to basic attack, and then go and snap to your ally to try and dodge skill shots, things like Ezreal Qs, and whatnot. Even Morgana bindings. But that one's a little riskier, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So Bop and Block is the passive, and that's what you're going to be using for trading. Now the Q is Prowling Projectile. You'll max this first and take a point in it at level 1. It is a skill shot, a linear skill shot, that will travel quite a distance, and it will make contact and explode, only damaging the first target hit. So this stops on minions, it doesn't AoE, and it only hits the first one. But this ability, as you can see, is quite long range. And when it reaches this last 100 units of the range when you're unattached to somebody, it will grow larger, deal bonus damage, and it will slow. As you can see there, it gets a little bit larger, but only during that last 100 units. You have to be quite accurate with it to get that slow and extra damage, if you're aiming for that, as opposed to just the poke. The interesting part about this being detached is you can click one way and Q the other way, and there is no quarter-second cast time. You can see this is like a Syndra Q. I input one movement command, aim my cursor there, and I will continue to just throw it over my shoulder and move. So if you're being chased, you can use this if it's the right distance, and slow somebody who's chasing you or in pursuit. Now, the ability completely changes when you W to somebody and you're attached. Prowling Projectile now becomes PK Thunder from Super Smash Bros. You have full control of this projectile, and you can guide it around for 3.5 seconds. Now this ability is slow, and the bonus damage kicks in after only 1 second. So, it gets larger, and now it's going to deal that damage, and it's going to slow. This makes the ability much easier to land, but remember there is a turn radius, so if you miss your target, you're probably just going to spin circles around them, and it's on your opponents to dodge it. Now, another interesting thing to note is that when you move, or your ally moves, while you cast this, the radius that you see here will actually move with you. I'll demonstrate that here. Now, that pretty much covers it for the Prowling Projectile. You'll be using that for the beginning of the game to just poke. You'll be using it in the late game to slow people down. And you'll be guiding it pretty much Heat-Seeking Missile the entire game. I think it's a really fun ability. I recommend maxing it first to the 6 points. And the reason is the rank up incentive is really good. It goes down in cooldown. It goes up in damage. It goes up in slow to 80% decaying slow. And the slow duration goes up to 1.5 seconds. So every point is very valuable. Now let's move on to You and Me, which you start with a point in for free at the beginning of the game, and you will be maxing last because the rank up incentive is crap. It does not decrease in cooldown with rank up. The only thing that increases is the fact that you give each other more adaptive force. That's not really great. It goes from 5% to 21%, but keep in mind, adaptive force is if you're getting AD, it is 12.6%. It is 60% of the value of the 21%. So if you're AP, it's 21%. If you're AD, it's 12.6%. So it's a little deceptive. If you're binding to something like a Jhin, you're not going to be getting or giving as much. Now, You and Me is really interesting. This ability starts with a 10-second cooldown. If I use it on somebody and then I detach, I have 10 seconds, which is indicated by the bar above the icon, of how much cooldown is remaining. The cooldown begins when you latch to somebody. So, if I detach now, I'll have about a 3-second cooldown remaining. And that's why you want to stay on somebody for a decent amount of time at the beginning of the game. So if you jump on somebody, you might as well commit for a bit to stay on them, maybe throw a Q out, and then detach later to help trade and push again. The W, when using it, you do go untargetable. But you're only untargetable when you arrive, not on your way. As you can see, my bar is green when I'm going between targets. And it's just an area in which somebody times it correctly. They can hit you with a skill shot. If there's an Amumu ultimate that happens in the center, if when I'm jumping across people, or even a Rakan charm, whatever it is, it will actually stop you from binding to somebody. You will be rooted or caught, and you will potentially die. It'll put the ability on cooldown, and you won't be able to actually complete it. And go to safety and be untargetable. AoEs don't hit you, nothing like that. You're completely safe in this form. But tower shots will continue to go through. So, one of the interesting parts about this is there's no cooldown when you jump between allies. Even at the start of the game, when there's a 10-second cooldown, if you detach, as you can see, the cooldown is still going. But if I were to go between people, no cooldown here, no cooldown here. But then there's a cooldown if the person dies or I detach from them. This cooldown is 10 seconds at level 1. It goes down to 5 seconds at level 6. And it goes down to 0 seconds at level 11. Which makes it quite a good ability for delivering the shield that is actually given to you by Bop and Block, your passive. Bop and Block passive shield is permanent, and when you W to somebody, you will give them the shield, and when you go away from them, it will come back on you. So now let's get into her other abilities. As the E is the next one. E is Zoomies. This heals you and increases up to almost twice the amount and gives a movement speed increase for 2 seconds. This only targets Yuumi.
Do not drop me. Do not.
So, if you use it, it will only be on her. This has a really short cooldown, 0.5 seconds. But if you rank this up, the cooldown of it actually, the charges and how you store them, goes down with every rank. And that's why you'll be maxing this second. So giving people movement speed based on AP is pretty damn good. And this ratio seems pretty good as well, having 4% with just almost 40 AP. It's pretty good. So this decaying movement speed as you get AP will go higher and higher, and it'll be very valuable for escaping and using these 2 charges to heal yourself, or if you attach to somebody, even if I mouse over them, you can see I put Zoomies, only heals me. But if I attach to somebody, it will now heal them. And only them. Even if I'm hurt, it will not heal me. That pretty much is it for zoomies. It's a pretty simple ability. It's pretty good for escaping, throwing Qs behind you, and just trying to get away that way. Your R is Final Chapter. This is a linear pulse that goes 7 times, and you strafe while you do it. So it's much like a Lucian R, where wherever you put your orientation, it will stay there. And you have to direct it, so be careful where you aim. It is 7 pulses of damage, and then every rank up doesn't increase anything but the damage and decrease the cooldown. Hitting somebody with multiple missiles only does 40% of the damage as opposed to 100%, so you're not really a bursty champion or anything like that. This is fantastic though, because when you hit somebody with 3 out of the 7 waves, they'll be rooted for 1.75 seconds. And that root does not increase with level. There's the root. And also, you cannot root somebody twice. There's an internal cooldown, and you can only get the root 1 time per cast. So, you'll be using this to peel off of your allies, or help them engage if you go with a Nocturne or something like that. When you use this with the W, you actually can use this to go around the fight and deliver more waves to multiple people if people are kiting around or somebody has a better angle than you that you can't quite reach. Final Chapter is pretty straightforward, and this ultimate is pretty good. I don't expect it to be, something that people overlook. I think it's pretty powerful, but it's not instantaneous. So if you can find a way to get people to stand in it, or you use it in choke points, or you have good follow-up, or it is the follow-up to a different type of CC, like an Amumu ultimate, then this is very powerful. Now let's get into some of those extra mechanics I was talking about with things like the W. The W has a really strange kind of mechanic here for blue side and red side. If you are a blue side Yuumi, you cannot go over this wall, because when you attach to somebody, you will always be on the bottom left-hand corner, or the southwest. If you are red side Yuumi, you will always be on the northeast side. So even if I approach this dummy from this side, and he's facing whatever direction, I will always go to the bottom side of them, every single time. So if I detach and W this way, I can't make it over this wall, no matter how fast or however much I spam it. But if I were red side Yuumi, I could do it. But as blue side Yuumi, I can go over this wall from this side. Because I hover down on this side of the champion, I can eject myself off to the side there. This works for many different walls. It works for the raptor wall. Just make sure that if you spam this, you won't always go through. So if you really want to make sure, you wait for the animation to finish, and then you go over that way once you coast over. Now, if I were red side Yuumi, I'd be able to use it from where my ward is and go this way, but I can't do it vice versa. Another interesting thing about the W is that if the person teleports, uses the Nocturne ultimate, Shen ultimate, flash, anything, it will take you with it. So, as I spawn there, I went with the dummy. This is a free ride to teleport to a top lane, to a bottom lane, anything like that. If the person recalls, you will go with them. And it is very important that you maybe harass, help somebody shove a wave if they're recalling, and then attach to them and get out. Even if you're in combat, I believe you can take some damage and then jump to somebody, and then if their recall finishes, you will go back with them. You can also attach to clones, things like Shaco clone, to LeBlanc clone, and whatnot. Now, there are some interesting cases here with how to play the mid game. You'll be using You and Me, which has no mana cost, to go up. You'll be warding brush, and then getting out. You and Me also goes over all walls, and so you can just go back and forth. There's a lot of mobility in this character, especially post level 11, when this has no cooldown. So you'll be warding in the mid game by using You and Me and having a buddy. Now in the late game, you'll be using You and Me to jump between people, to heal them, to give them little bits of boosts and what they need, as well as assist in the engage. Now, Q does not give vision of brush. It doesn't give any vision. If I put an enemy dummy in there, it doesn't give vision, even if it hits. But if you take Aery, you'll see that it made contact, and you'll be able to know that there's somebody in there.
It's gotta be here
If I take it this, and I go like this, I can even check pretty much the length of a brush if I wanted to. Go this way, and all the way up. And it's got a pretty decent range. So I really like this ability for checking brush, and utilizing the fact that you will have your Aery go off to check and indicate that there is somebody in that bush, even if you can't see them. That pretty much does it for the abilities. There's not much more to Yuumi in that regard. So let's talk a little bit more about the ideal way to play the lane, the mid game, and the late game. I pretty much covered this already, but I'll just sum it up. Early game, you won't be attached to somebody. Attack, use bop and block, deliver shields, get that mana back, and harass. During the mid game, you'll be warding using the tactic that I just showed you, and face checking bushes, but not with your face, but instead with your Q. Then, the late game, you'll be in team fights using your ultimate to assist, or your E to help speed boost people, and potentially your Q to slow and pick people off. Now, let's go over the item build. Item build for Yuumi is going to be up in the air and up for debate. I personally think that Spell Thief's Edge is going to be the best item for her, but only if you're not going to just latch onto somebody for the lane phase, because you can't basic attack. You'll never get enough of this stack, and if you aren't going to actually basic attack during the lane phase, you'll probably never basic attack for the rest of the game. So if you're using Spell Thief's Edge, utilize bop and block and your 500 range, but if you're a more passive player, I recommend that you go ahead and you take the coin. Ancient Coin is most likely what you'll take, and you'll just pick that up for the cooldown reduction, and it's a fairly good item overall. This will help you complete your Sightstone, and you'll be good to go. Now when it comes to the rest of the items, I highly recommend Ardent Censer, Redemption, Mikhail's, and there's a few other tech items that you can potentially buy. Maybe Athene's. Maybe Athene's. But there are some good ones out there. You can buy Knight's Vow, you can buy Zeke's if you really want to. Pretty much all those support items, including Shirelia's, which I think is also a good one that makes it pretty unique that there's things like the Mikhail's and the Shirelia's that actually have really good synergy with Yuumi in general. Now, let's go over why for each item. Ardent Censer for me is kind of a no-brainer. Because if you use your bop and block passive, you basic attack somebody, you W to another person, you give them Ardent Censer. And as long as you go between people, you will give both people Ardent Censer forever. This has no cooldown on the W, just don't get hit when you're going in between people. Because what you're doing is you're delivering your passive shield to them. So if the shield isn't actually broken, or your Aery goes off, that will actually help out and give them the Ardent Censer for those 6 seconds. Now, another interesting part of Ardent Censer is it has that heal and shield power, and it makes it just an overall good item for when you use your E to heal somebody, and you can also just give them more. So if I stay in on somebody and I don't have anybody else to attach to, I can stay on them, I can use detach, attach back, give them Aery, and then they get Ardent Censer again, or I can E them. Those are all great ways to apply it and keep it up with a high uptime. Now let's talk about Mikhail's Crucible before we talk about Redemption, as the synergy, I think, is what's important. Mikhail's Crucible will give you a lot of mana regen, which is quite good for Yuumi, and the health regen that you can go ahead and go for trades. Then you can cower away and make sure that you're attached to somebody, and you just regen during that time. This has 20% increased heal and shield power, which affects your shield. So, you'll be giving a bigger shield to people, you'll be giving a bigger heal, and it has good synergy with Redemption that I'll go over later. Mikhail's Crucible, though, you can use it on yourself, right? But the hard part of this, to kind of deny it being a good item for Yuumi, is that if you're attached to somebody and you Mikhail's them, you also just pretty much gave your marksman a free QSS. If you just keep Mikhail's on them for when they need it, you will remove all of the stuns, roots, CC, etc. You'll grant them immunity to it for 2 seconds, and you will give them a movement speed increase by 40% for 2 seconds if you did actually cleanse something off. So, Mikhail's Crucible is fantastic at keeping whoever you're attached to, the parasitic host, alive. So they will kite away, and you'll be able to stay alive yourself. Now let's throw in the extra kicker of that 20% healing and shielding power that a lot of champions don't pick up when they get Redemption. Redemption is just overall a good support item. You can use this active while you're attached to somebody easily. But the thing about Redemption is that it benefits. Healing and shielding power is 3 times as effective on Redemption's heal. So, Mikhail's Crucible actually adds 60% effective healing to the redemption, as opposed to just the 20%, and that 20% is something that a lot of people wouldn't get anyway. So, if you were to end up picking up the Mikhail's, the Ardent Sensor, and the Redemption, you'd be looking at 40% healing and shielding power, which will change over to 120% healing and shielding power for the Redemption. Athene's Unholy Grail is a good item to pick up for when you get some harass down. You may be sitting there going, but you only get to give people healing up to the amount that you actually heal them. So this cannot surpass if I actually shield somebody with Aery. Because my Aery is a value of just 61 is what it's saying right now, then that's not that big a deal. Or I guess 61 plus 70, 130. I have 188, and so Aery won't be enough to deliver the whole thing. But my Bop and Block will be. My Bop and Block is, as you can see, almost a 280 AP shield, or shield value, and I'll be able to heal people for pretty much that whole thing. Next is Shirelia's. Shirelia's is a good item just to grant whoever you're with movement speed increase. It's really good at just getting people into the fight, out of the fight, whatever else. Basically, you want to become as... Basically, what Yuumi wants to do is give people item actives so that they don't have to buy them themselves. So if there's some CC in the game, you don't really need QSS yourself. And if there's no suppression, you just tell your marksman, I got you, bro. I have the Mikhail's. He can buy QSS if he wants to cover himself on top of that. But if he doesn't want to dip into, you know, that hit and damage where you don't have more attack speed or crit, then go ahead and do that. So that pretty much does it for the items. Like I said, you want to start with the Spell Thief's Edge if you'll harass. If you're not going to harass, you should just go ahead and get the coin. So I highly recommend Spell Thieves in melee matchups, and then I recommend the coin in long-range matchups that you think are unfavorable for you, and you'll probably be trying to dodge things out. Now, let's finish up with the Rune Choices. The Rune Choices are very... Actually, before I do that, one final thing. Yuumi doesn't need boots. You don't actually have to buy boots on Yuumi, as you'll just be jumping on people, and you'll be able to go between them pretty easily. If you do buy boots, you'll probably get Moby boots to get back to lane, or if you go for a roam, you'll try to ward and then get out and do all that. But I don't think she needs boots. You'll be on top of somebody, and the travel speed of your W is fixed, so this does not change. It does not get faster if you have boots or anything like that. So you aren't missing out on much by not getting them. And you free up an inventory slot for another item that could be useful for somebody that you're attached to. Now, let's go to my Rune Choices. You take Aery so that you can check Brush. It's quite good. You can take Comet if you want to, if you feel like you're going to get the slow off, but I recommend Aery for the shield application, and it has some good synergy. Manaflow Band, because your mana costs are pretty high. During the early parts of the game, you'll be spamming your abilities, and you can go during the lane phase. I take Absolute Focus from the Sorcery tree, because while you're above 70% HP, which you will be for pretty much most of the game, and if you avoid things during the early game in the lane phase, you'll just be dipping into this and going, I have free ability power at level 1, level 2, 3, etc. And this ability is actually quite good to have. So Absolute Focus is you can be attached to somebody, you can't take any AoE damage, so you'll probably have Absolute Focus for most of the game. I take Scorch for some extra damage to champions, just for the poking, because Water Walking and Transcendence are not really, or not Transcendence, Gathering Storm are not really that great. If you take Gathering Storm, that'd be the other one that I say you could take. That's about it. If you're not going to win the lane phase or anything along those lines, then you don't really need Scorch. Now, this one is up for debate. I've seen things like Ultimate Hunter for people who want to actually have Final Chapter on a lower cooldown. You can go for, a Zombie Ward. You can go for in Precision Tree. You can go for Presence of Mind for a lower cooldown as you get tons of assists. But there's really nothing great in terms of the rest of the Precision Tree to follow that up. You can go the Inspiration Tree if you want the boots, if you want the stopwatch. Any of those nice little things. I don't think they're that valuable compared to these two runes that you'll be taking in the Resolve Tree. In the Resolve Tree, you go Revitalize just so you have 5% stronger heals. So you have healing and shielding power. And it's increased by an additional 10% on targets below 40% HP. So you'll be helping people out when they're lower. And I just think it's overall a really good rune to have for most healers. Now here's where I think there's an abuse case. Shield Bash has no internal cooldown. You're not going to be making use of that extra armor and magic resistance while you're shielded. Whenever you gain a new shield, your basic attack against a champion deals bonus magic damage. This is huge. So while you're shielded, so I'm shielded right now. So I actually have that extra bonus to my armor. So it's harder to break my shield. It makes it just a little bit more durable, which can make a difference in trades early game. But the cool part of this is that when you get your bop and block, you heard that sound? That chunk? That chunk? That is shield bash hitting. It kind of sounds like a shield hitting something. So, what that means is when I hit with my passive, it already applies shield bash immediately. So, the bop and block basic attack has shield bash on it. So it's extra damage. Now, here's the kicker, is that shield bash thinks that you are reapplying your shield when you actually detach. So as I attach to somebody, and then I detach, this shield feels like, from the game's perspective, it was just given back to me. Because I lose it, give it to him, and then I come back with it. So I'll attack. I have shield bash on literally every basic attack. And this, I'll turn the cooldown off, is without cooldowns. So you can trade like this, and this is pretty much available to you, I would say, very early in the game. So you can actually do a double shield bash basic attack at the start of the game if you were level 1. You could just attack, shield bash, bop and block, go on, detach, hit again with a second shield bash. Very quickly. Later in the game, you'll want to hold on if you're level 6 to 10, because it's a 5-second cooldown on your you and me, and this is level 11, where the cooldown actually goes down to 0 seconds, and then you'll be able to attach and unattach. And you'll get shield bash a lot. So I find a high amount of value in trading and allowing you to have some lane pressure and lane presence. Now, to close it all out, I'm going to go over the summoner spells. Because I don't think you need boots at all, I actually don't think you need flash either. Flash has pretty low value for Yuumi, as you'll be mostly going between allies with your W and just making sure that you're jumping around fights. If you're caught out and you have to use flash, honestly, you're probably doing something wrong before the whole thing of not taking flash came into play. So you're probably mispositioning, you're probably on the wrong ally, or your team is just not playing together. So having flash probably wouldn't save you the game there anyway. But I highly recommend taking heal, ignite, or exhaust. These abilities can be used. Heal will actually heal both people, even while bound, so you can heal yourself a little bit. This is affected by healing and shielding power, so it's even more powerful, synergizing with your items and Revitalize. And the ignite is just if you jump to somebody and you want to go ahead and you trade. Let's say you trade, the person flashes away, your buddy flashes with him, you can go after him, come here, eject yourself, and you can trade and kind of go forward and maybe finish off a kill. Exhaust is good too if you're going to play the peel game, but you get to take basically 2 summoner spells without one of them being flash, because you don't really have to worry about it post lane phase. It does make you a little gankable, but you know what? Your flash is now out of the game, so might as well just use your buddy's flash. Jump on him, have him flash away, and then you're good to go. So that pretty much does it for Yuumi. She has some pretty unique mechanics, unique builds, and in terms of how you would play her, all around, it's kind of a different champion than anything we've seen in League of Legends. I imagine she'll be pretty high skill cap with trying to bait out some abilities from people by playing on the front line for the beginning of the fight, and then making sure that she goes away and she can dodge things. If you dodge something big, it can make or break the fight. Just watch out for those roots, make sure you don't get hit, and that's pretty much it. So that does it for Yuumi. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And hell yeah, we're back!